Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome you once again on this Wednesday evening to Wednesday nights with myself, Inayat Wadi. We welcome our listeners, our viewers at Salam Media. And tonight we are paying tribute to an icon in more ways than one. Someone who has been described as a fearless leader of our times, and also at the same time for his thinking through journalism, his poetry, where he has been renowned for, and representing the voiceless in more ways than one. And clearly, it's saddened us to be losing someone, an icon and a giant, a legend in every way. We're going to be paying tribute to Dr. Don Mattera. Now, I recall having him in studio with me in Salam Media a few years ago. And I must admit, it was one of the most fascinating interviews that I had. And even at that age, he was blessed with a memory. He was blessed with so much in more ways than one. And clearly, he made a huge impact on the lives of many. And that is the reason why we are paying tribute to him. Sadly, he passed away a few days ago, buried at the West Park Cemetery. And I've seen so many tributes pouring in from right across the entire country. Now, this is a man who will be remembered for so much, and people who will be remembering, who will be paying tribute to him tonight. We've got Lybon Mabasa with who is a Black consciousness activist. We've got Snowy Mattera, the daughter, and also in charge of the Don Mattera Foundation. We've got Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, political writer and author. We've got Bishop Clyde, Ramalaine, Theologian, and political scientist. So these are the people who we are fortunate having with us tonight here, right now on Salam Media. So just to remind our listeners and our viewers, this interview is going live on Salam Media. You can view this interview on the various platforms of Salam Media, on Facebook, and also on our YouTube channel. Going across to all our panelists, and from top to bottom, we've got Lybon Mabasa, Snowy Mattera, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, and Bishop Clyde Ramalaine. Good evening, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I'd like to actually start off with Snowy Mattera, because Snowy, being the daughter of the late Dr. Don Mattera, and looking at him, firstly, our condolences go to you, to the family, for your loss. It is a sad loss, but also we have lost a legend. We have lost a giant amongst giants. And I recall doing an in-depth interview with him a few years ago, where he took me through his childhood, where he took me through the time when he was an activist, even at the point in time when he was a gangster as well. And those memories was flooding through. He read some of his poetry out on air as well. And just give us an insight as to who your father was.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for all the accolades. Thank you for remembering him. Thank you for appreciating the talent that Allah, God, had given him, and acknowledging that he had dedicated his life indeed to all and sundry. I am his fourth born child. I'm his daughter. I am also a member of the Don Mattera Legacy Foundation. Our chairperson is Jaftha. So I'll be talking on behalf of my siblings or family and on behalf of the foundation. You asked how I wish to, or what I'd like to tell you about my dad. What is it that you wanted to know particularly?
Well, just take us through, you being obviously his daughter, as a father, as a family man, what he meant to you, and also during the time of the struggle, how this was received and how this was seen by the family.
Yeah. So firstly, like first recollections of my dad as a young child was his complete dedication to people. We were in Westbury, and we always had people coming to our house asking for this or the other, especially help for their families, school fees, money for bread, etc. I recall during the week how my sister was 2 years older than me, would say to me, let's ask Toppy, or at the time we used to call him Papa, for bicycle money. And we'd ask him for money, and he'd say, no, I don't have money. And she'd say, watch, in 2 or 5 minutes, somebody else is going to come and ask him, and he'll give them money. So we grew up knowing that we came second with most things when it came to service. His service was mostly directed to other people first. It took us a long time to accept that that was his calling and what God had intended for him to do. Only as adults did we accept and understand that he was called to a higher order than what we thought he was called for. So he was always serving community, either if it was not organizing gangsters to stop wars, calling them together to give up their weapons, and instead to form soccer teams in Westbury. He made people challenge or beat each other in soccer, etc., as opposed to beat each other with weapons. That was in the 70s, and then we moved on to El Dorado Park. He started a community safety group long before there was the likes of the ADTs and that. There was a alarm system thing that they started. If there's any domestic abuse, especially, women could blow their whistles or ring this alarm, and all the men in the neighborhood would descend on this family or person who beat on their family and so on. There was the soccer team, there was boxing teams, there was annual picnics that he organized. Really a life of total service to community and kind.
Thank you for that, Snowy. And I'd just like to bring Dr. Ebrahim Harvey into the discussion. And as a fellow writer, I'm sure, Dr. Harvey, you've admired the poetry, you've admired the work that was produced by this legend. And as Snowy had mentioned, that he was an advocate for social justice. And I saw a tribute, and in this tribute, it says that, he was a great leader. He was a great leader in more ways than one. Leaders don't die. They live forever. And this is exactly what we are doing tonight, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey. We are celebrating the legendary qualities of the late marhum, Dr. Dan Umaruddin Mattera.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let me, this past few days since Don has passed away, it's just been non-stop interviews and so on. So my head is just filled up with the question of Don, the legacy and issues. It's been an intense 2-3 days, I've even had to turn down some interviews because I couldn't cope. But, I'm going to try and very briefly at the outset, just, provide some perspective on Don, who I've known for over 50 years. I had a brother who only the people who are close to me know, inner circle. He introduced me to Don Rashid Dynamite Khan. He played for Orlando Pirates, Cape Town Spurs, Pretoria Sundowns, etc. That's what my brother, and he introduced me to Don at the Oval Stadium in Western Westbury. I think it was around about 1970-71. So I was a soccer fanatic. I loved soccer, breathed soccer. I mean, totally following in the footsteps of my brother. And here Don came and took me away completely from soccer into politics. And at that time he was still with the Labour Party. That's where his politics actually begins, And then I think he got a bit disillusioned, or he sought a broader political identity, more non-racial, anti-race identity, and he joined the Black consciousness movement. But let me tell you what is the. So I know Don extremely well. Let me tell you, I mean, I've spent so much time with him, and at that time, most of the guys who were part of the group of ours were in exile, And so I had so much time with Don, and as I indicated, he played such a pivotal role in my own life and awakened me so much. Although, I departed from the Black consciousness movement in 1977, I went on to other things, and we often had those debates because he was a fervent adherent, of the Black consciousness philosophy. Although people forget something, Don was very closely linked to the PAC2, APLA 2. In fact, the pension that Don got was partly to do with the military wing of the PAC, APLA activities and so on. A lot of people don't know about that. So Don crisscrossed, and he never seen it as a contradiction in terms. I think he was more of a Pan-Africanist, if you understand it, than a BC thing. So he never seen it as a contradiction in terms that, he also was a big supporter of the PAC and APLA. But let me tell you the most startling thing about Don Mattera to me. If you know, and if you read Memory is the Weapon, now Memory is the Weapon is to me. If you look at Don's history and background and being a big gangster in Safari, it's all the more remarkable. It's the best non-fictional work on what has happened in Safari Town, where he lived. And, that he captured so poignantly in his book. But it's that he makes the transition from being one of the most feared gangsters, in his day. I mean, Brazinga, nobody could touch him. I mean, the guy was just, even, when he left Safari Town, people still spoke about his feats when he was a gangster and what he did single-handedly, But it is to go from that background to leave it and to go into politics and a community man, and a big love of Don was soccer. People don't talk enough about it. But what he did with soccer, let me tell you what Don did with soccer. And he employed it as a mechanism, a peacemaking mechanism, particularly in Western Westbury. So it's not just that he loved soccer, but he used soccer as a tool to try and bring the Spaldings and the fast guns. Everybody loves soccer. It's a popular sport. So, we once spoke about it, and he said that people didn't realize, they just thought he loved the soccer, the sport, but he actually consciously used it because he knew all the guys loved soccer. And even the gangsters played soccer, So it was in a very effective, but it's not easy to go from that type of world, underworld, a gangster world that Don inhabited. I mean, to leave it totally and become the community man he did. Okay, then later on he joined Islam, etc. But I don't think we pay enough attention. We talk about Don the poet, literature, but not enough. And it may be partly, and I'll tell you, I had some debates and arguments with him. I think in Don's poetry and in writings, he brings out a lot of non-racial ethos, humanity, etc. But I don't think perhaps enough attention was placed in his work. Now, the last thing Don Mattera would want you to do, and he's passed away, let me tell you, we discussed it even. Don't give any post-burial issues, things about him, his legacy, and talk untruths and, embellish the facts. No, Don didn't want that. Don wanted you to say everything that you think you needed to, a balanced assessment of him, the good strong points of his. He had lots of failures and weaknesses. I know of personally. We lots of times had arguments and things like that, but we'll always get together because we come such a long way over 50 years, But I think that, and if you look at the Don Mattera Foundation, I must just quickly deal with this question. The Don Mattera Foundation, if you look at where the country is at this moment, it's the biggest, worst the townships are falling apart, everything. And so as much as literature...
Can I just stop you there for a minute? I just want to bring, I want to actually talk about
that. Yeah, okay, no, sorry.
Very
okay.
important issue.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
I just want to bring Lybon Mabasa into the discussion as well. And Lybon, just your recollection of Don Mattera, and we've heard Dr. Ebrahim Harvey speak about being involved with Black consciousness as well, and just looking at your recollection and what he actually meant for the Black consciousness movement.
Actually, I think Bradon Ozinga was bigger than any organization. O.C. Davis paying tribute to Malcolm X, he calls him the shining star of our personhood or our manhood, as he said at Malcolm's funeral. I think that would apply to a larger extent to Bradon Mattera. Like I said at the burial, that I came across Brazinga in 1974, and I would call myself his favorite child, maybe. I've been in the BC movement. I've been a leader in the BC movement, but I think he had a very special place for me. I think in one of his poetry books, they passed here. There are two particular poems that are actually dedicated to me. I have worked with Bradon. I know he's a man of peace. And when at the nascent stage of the Black consciousness movement, the early 70s, when he worked with young people like Rubin Hay, for instance, at one time they had young people coming from the gangs, the Spiders, the Fast Guns, and actually Rubin Hay and Bradon told the young people, the young gangsters, that why are you fighting amongst yourself and killing each other? Wouldn't it be better that if you have weapons, you turn those weapons against the people who are oppressing you? You turn those weapons to those actually who are killing you. Bradon was an extremely wonderful person. I have pointed out that the word icon is not enough, because the man was a colossus. He was big. He was big in love, big in caring, big in making sure that his love for Black people could be seen. He loved Black people with his whole heart. And as Snowy is saying, when Bradon says he can't help you, maybe he can't help you as an individual, but every time he gets a chance to make a contribution to the bigger community, Bradon would not think. In the 80s, when South Africa was engulfed in the internecine violence, where people from Azapo were being killed, it was Bradon who would walk the streets of Soweto, who would go to the churches and actually organize that peace should reign in our locations. His poems were, some of them were heart-wrenching, some of them were the most beautiful poems one could ever hear. I know some of the people Bradon used to work with when he was still a gangster, who turned away from crime because Bradon actually talked to them and convinced them that there was a much bigger cause than robbing people, than fighting amongst them themselves. There is no event, there is no happening in our country which Bradon did not record in poetry, which he did not interpret in poetry. In the Black Consciousness movement, me and him shared the communality of things we could do. I led the burial of Ntate Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, and we would sit and talk about how do we help all liberation movements. So to us, yes, we belonged to our individual organizations. I grew up in the Black Consciousness movement. I have worked with different people in different communities in the Black Consciousness movement and in our communities. But above all, we understood how we should help everybody. When Mama Winnie Mandela was taken to Brantford, I can tell you the following day, it was us in the Black Consciousness movement who were there to provide whatever help we could give. And this was the spirit of Ntate Don Mattera. If we talk about Don, we can talk until the chicken come home. He was totally committed. He knew where he belonged. He knew which organization he was associated with. But above all, he loved Black people, and he would give anything for them in order to lift them up. In 1999, we contest an election under the slogan, Black people first. And when people said we were being racist, it was Don who said, we have to equalize things before we talk about the unity of everybody. You can't unite people who are not on equal stand. When others are at 100 meters and you are starting at 0, you cannot unite. You can't talk about uniting our people. And he went to Kaya FM and said, if I die, please get Lybon to come and speak at my funeral. He went to the PAC where he had taken membership, and he said, please, if I die, I'm your member, but if I die, please get Lybon to come and speak at my funeral. So we had that relationship. He was my topi. I loved him with all my heart, and he refused to speak English with me. No Zulu, no Tswana. He would speak Xitsonga with me at all times and say, "I man, these people don't understand," and so on. And as I talk about him now, I doff my head to a great, great man.
Well, he certainly was a great man, Lybon, and we're also going to now get views from Bishop Clyde Ramalaine. And Bishop, you've been listening to Snowy, you've been listening to Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, and also now to Lybon Mabasa. And I'm sure, as Lybon mentions, we can talk till the chickens come home. But at the end of the day, there's just so much, because this man was a giant, and as Lybon mentioned, an icon. Is doing injustice in describing who Don Mattera really was.
Good evening.
If you could unmute your mic, please, Bishop Clyde.
Is it now okay? Are we on?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Thank you to my fellow panelists. Let me start off by first saying thank you to Snowy Mattera and her siblings. I start by saying that because of the fact that Don was a community man, and if they did not share their father with us, we all would have been much poorer in that sense. So I would like to say to Snowy, to Gregory, to Teddy, and all the others, thank you for sharing Topi with us. We have benefited from Topi because Topi was many times absent with you. Having been raised in a house myself of a community worker, my dad, late dad, I know the pain of children not having their fathers always present when their fathers are busy with either freedom, liberation work, or community assistance. Hence, I thought it only befitting to first thank the Mattera children for having shared their dad with us. Talking about Don, there is nothing that's fake about Don. Don, as I called him, transcended every boundary that anyone could put: religion, race, color, language, class, anything that you would want to put as a boundary in definition of people. Don Mattera transcended that. It's for this reason that I was thinking, after attending both his funeral and Jesse Duarte's funeral, that we must perhaps rethink in our discourse how we celebrate the lives of people like that when we have their funerals. And just hear me out when I say this. Because when individuals of that size and stature passes on, we all feel we belong, he belonged or she belonged to us. And maybe as we sojourn in our discourse and find better ways for our social cohesion project, it becomes important to look at how we can find means to better celebrate that. I'm saying that to say, I'm sitting here as a Christian theologian. Don was a professing Muslim to the end. Yet this theologian or pastor would sit with Don at his house, and of course he lived in different places at different times. And we would engage on philosophy. We would talk about theology. We would talk about the Quran. We would talk about the Bible. Don would pray with this Christian, the prayer and pray in Jesus' name. Don would pray to the glory of Allah at the same time. Don understood that it was always about the human spirit, and he lived for that. The thing that touched me about Don most was his caring heart. Don would meet you, or you would be with Don somewhere in Eldos, maybe at the Pop Center or wherever we have a meeting, and Don would be there. He would then take you by the hand and say, "Melaiti, kom hoiso." Then he called someone from a corner, and it would be someone that has a need. Don would then say to that person in your presence, "Ek wil hê jy moet die tannie iets sort. Ek wil hê jy moet die mense iets sort. Help hulle gou daarso." That was Don. He could never go into a place and not help someone. I said the other day when we were interviewed at the house, I said that I remember one incident clearly where Don was visiting either in the Eastern Cape, and they were honoring him at some point in time. And then on that occasion, they were giving him a check in an envelope. But there was an NGO there also present. Don received the check and handed the check or the envelope over in sealed form to the NGO. I think he later discovered it was about 200,000 rand that he gave away that night. And he did not flinch. I'm trying to say that. Yet Don, in his own way, had a way of speaking to you to inspire you. And so for that reason, Don ensembles for me an institution. The man understood what life was all about. At the same time, he was able to mix the pain and the joy of life. And it came throughout his work that he had produced. One of the sad realities of our nation is the fact that Don's work in this nation is not prescribed work. I don't know what is the reason that Don's work, the collection of work that Don Mattera produced, is not yet prescribed work. While in institutions as far aflung as New York, it is definitely prescribed work. There is something wrong in our society if we do not remember. And when he tells us memory is the weapon. My final point with regard to Don was that Don was fearless. You could not contain Don in a party. You couldn't contain him in an organization. You couldn't contain him in a race group. You couldn't define him in a particular tribe. Everybody claimed Don. But he was fearless in whatever he believed. And I think that is, for me, the part that he had imparted in many of us as his kids, as his youngsters, as his, what he would call, say, lighty. And I remember on one occasion that I was delivering a poem. And as I delivered this poem, some politician asked Don, as he sat next to Don, who is this guy? This is many years ago. And Don said to him in Afrikaans, "My like is ek maak hulle groot om julle te byt aan 'n dag. Hulle gaan julle nog byt, want julle respect hulle nie." You know, and that's who Don was. And Don at the same time, he had the uncanny neck to be very funny about things. He could talk about things, and he had a great sense of humor. I mean, I remember time being around him and the late Fikile, the late Fikile Bum, who was a great friend too. And he could poke fun at all times. It is interesting that Don chose the day like 18th July to leave this time. And I mean, we all know what 18th July means within the setting of within the setting of Nelson Mandela. And I think I want to say that I speak on behalf of many 55-year-olds and even younger that Don mentored. When I produced my first poetry book called Gekraakte Blare, Don and I argued in his house as to whether I could write in one book English, Afrikaans, and Afrikaans, and Tsotital at the same time. And I said to him, Don, I don't care what the convention says. I'm going to publish this book. Don was there at the publishing and he read one of my poems. That's the Don Mattera that I will remember as long as I live. He inspired more people daily. He inspired people wherever he had gone. He was just a full human. He had his flaws, but when I sit here and reflect upon him today, I reflect upon a full human who lived his purpose to the full, who touched many thousands of millions of lives and has left us. But he hasn't left us alone. He gave us enough material because he lived full and he died empty. It is for this reason, again, that I'm saying that we have now to pick up the baton and we have to continue to work towards social cohesion, to work towards the true reality of non-racialism and not this haphazard, hashed version that is currently parading in our politics. We have to find a way to engage and get beyond the issue of race so that race no longer confines us to who we think we are, but to better us to a better place. And that is my reflection on Don Mattera. We will certainly miss him. We certainly appreciate him. And to the family, we say we are praying for him. There are many of us in the clergy groups that have Don touched in his own way. And I speak on behalf of all the Christian clergy that I can reflect on, who all told me even before this tonight, say that on behalf of all of us, just say thank you to Uncle Don, that he was not bound by a religion or a structure, a party or a group in that regard.
Well, thank you for that, Bishop. And, clearly fascinating just listening to all of you. And personally, for me, I met the great Don Mattera on 3 occasions. One where I had spent close to 2 hours in studio with him at Salam Media. On the second occasion, when he launched his book in Sophia Town, and also on the third occasion, when he was honored by the Minara Chamber of Commerce for the legend that he was. So those were my recollections when I have met him just on the 3 occasions. But these are memories that will last forever as to the stature of the man and what he had done and the contribution that he had made to the betterment of society. We're going to go for, we're just going to play out a very short video clip, and this was in 2019 when he was interviewed in the studios of Salam Media. So we're going to play out this very, very short clip before we come back to the panelists.
You can see now they're running for votes. Life is a race. In this race, everyone wants to win, but nobody wants to turn around and see who they want to take with and heal. This country is bleeding like it never bled before.
Why do you say that?
I'm telling you. Mandela was saved not to save black people, save white people. Because the Bible says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. And Mandela, Allah saves him for 27 years to show them about our humanity.
So if the country is bleeding, how do we stop the bleeding?
You stop the eating. My dear brother, are you guys blind? Go and stand under the bridges. See how many people sleep under the bridges. See how many people are dying in the shacks. See how many people are living on nothing. Hundreds of thousands of our people.
So how do we get them away from there to have a life of decency, Umaruddin Don Mattera?
Sheikh, I've just told you now, our religion is compassion, Ubuntu, caring for others. Jy het nie hemp nie, vat my hemp. Jy het nie skoene nie, Vat my skoene. Jy's honger, jy het nie kos nie, vat my kos. Jy het nie 'n plek om te slaap nie, kom slaap in my huis.
Maar doen die mense dit?
I'm
Are they
telling
doing-
you, they are not. Because it's about greed. There are lots of them. The word that saved the so-called white people, they're not bloody white. They are just people. No one is black. No one is colored. We are human beings in the human life of our people.
Yes, that was the interview that Ashraf Garda had conducted with the great Don Mattera in 2019. And Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, if you'd just like to come in, and I know you were going to be talking about where we are today and how the great Don Mattera had actually seen the South Africa of today, and he was talking about a country that is basically bleeding, and there's just so much that he said in those 2 minutes. A lot of food for thought, and just your thoughts as well, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey.
Well, the things that Don spoke about, what is it? It's essentially, he was crying out about the lack of social justice in the country. All those things he referred to as the conditions people were living under, homeless, foodless, etc. And this takes me to the question of the legacy of Don Mattera and what the foundation that has been started to honor him will do. I was thinking a lot about this during the week. And as much as the arts, poetry, literature is important in the work of that foundation, I was hoping, that the foundation, to the extent that it is able to, secure the resources to, for this kind of program of work. But I think getting into the communities, really there is so, if you just take Eldos and Kliptown and those areas, it's terrible. Things have never been as bad as they are today, generally in all the townships. But that the foundation finds the ways and means of getting down to community work and dealing with those kind of issues, that the kind of issues that Don spoke about. I think it would do the legacy of Don, so that even the poetry and literature and the arts needs to be placed in perspective, I think, in relation to the nature of this crisis that we're facing today. I did a big read piece yesterday in the Business Day on the crisis in Joburg, and it's stark, really, it's stark. And Don for the past 1 to 2 years was frail and ill and so on. But I know that once when I did get an opportunity to talk to him, I think it was on the phone, year before last, 1921, or I think that COVID has just started. But what I did notice was that this kind of social justice issues was appearing more in what he had to say than before. Obviously, COVID had a devastating impact on communities, and maybe the effects of that, he spoke on the phone, and more than ever before, talking about the conditions that people were facing, and you can imagine it's so much worse now than it was when we spoke about 2 years ago. So it's a fervent wish of mine that the Don Mattera Legacy Foundation, makes that a priority of its work, Well, in any case, it sums up Don. 2 words stood out for me, and Don repeatedly spoke of it: compassion. I used to even sometimes get tired and tell him, hey, man, but he had an understanding of why its central significance and how it should manifest itself in different walks of life. But it was very big. But, ultimately to end off, I think even more than a poet, an artist, playwright, whatever, the word that best sums up for me, Don Mattera, is the word community. And with it, the word that he often used more than any other word I remember Don speaking about is compassion.
Yes,
and there you put the two together, hopefully that becomes the thrust of the foundation's work. Yeah.
Well, definitely, and I saw Snowy Mattera actually smiling when you mentioned the word compassion, and we're going to ask Snowy, obviously looking at him as a compassionate person, but also at the same time, when we're talking about social justice, the work that Dr. Ebrahim Harvey speaks about with the Don Mattera Foundation, and just looking at the communities, because I'm sure, Snowy, you've had exposure to a lot of the communities that he was involved with as you were growing up as a child. And also, I suppose that there are still many members of the community that remember him, whether we're talking about Westbury or even El Dorado Park, for instance. Snowy, I think your mic is muted. If you could mute your mic, please.
Yeah, just sorry, there's a terrible lag and also connection issues on my side. I've tried 3 devices already for connectivity. But yeah, Ebrahim, you are right. In fact, above all religions, he said that compassion is the ultimate religion. So, and obviously his commitment to community was the epitome of his life's work. So indeed, issues that affect people daily, social justice, the lack of delivery, social delivery of services, etc., and the huge unemployment and continuous suffering of our people has been topmost of his mind at all times. And I was very sad when I realized that my dad is dying after he spent his entire life sacrificing for the freedoms, economic and other freedoms of people, that he dies at a time when the country is at a height of its social problems and suffering and political instability that is going on. And one almost wonders if it was a lost cause. But I believe that his life's work will live on, and there will be posterity in his books and in his works, because people that will follow will see that he had been struggling or fighting this cause for a long time. So all is not lost. He did die at a very difficult time when he was at Barra Hospital. A lot of people asked why we sent my dad to Barra Hospital. Could he not go to a private hospital, or could he not go to one military hospital at that stage? And I thought it was quite befitting that the people see that there is injustice in our healthcare, and if Don Mattera could suffer the lack or the lack of service, etc., at hospitals, so do other people. And he was at the right place where he could also see, other people could see what service was not provided for people in healthcare, etc. And many other things he experiences with his own family. We have many of our young people in the family who are on drugs, who are unemployed, that he had to assist. And it's things that he lived with daily. So he did not live in Sandton. He did not live in an ivory tower. He remained with the people. He remained, if I could quote or steal from Professor Janssen's topic at the Legacy Foundation lecture, the topic was unbought and unbowed. And I think that slogan will remain, or should remain, to epitomize what he stood for. And then as far as the organization, the Don Mattera Legacy Foundation is at its infancy stage. It was only launched February 2020, the next month. It was locked down. So we only managed to launch the foundation, and we had our inaugural lecture in March. But we are earmarking, and we've already earmarked community projects, because we know that social justice was central to his life. And we are in September month going to organize poetry session, arts workshops in El Dorado Park and Westbury, soccer games, etc., as at the initial phase. So yes, topmost at the foundation's intention, besides preserving his legacy, is, or by preserving his legacy, social cohesion, social justice, and community is topmost of our minds. And yes, Ebrahim, the foundation is looking for volunteers and people to join the board. So please come in and assist where you can to make sure that this legacy does continue and Don's interests get preserved.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Snowy. And just to bring Lybon back into the discussion, and Lybon, we heard Bishop Clyde say that Don Mattera was fearless, but also at the end of the day, we know that he was uncompromising, and apart from being fearless, and that interview that we had played out in 2019, he was disappointed, but one could also sense the emotion and the anger looking at the country where it is at this point in time, where the country is actually headed, despite all the sacrifices that Don Mattera had made, and people like yourself and many other heroes that this country have seen over the years to get us to a stage where we became a free, where we became a democratic country. But clearly, one could hear the emotion, the anger, and the disappointment in his voice during that interview.
I'm touched by what Snow is saying. I was a teacher in 1976, and one of the poems prescribed was Abu Ben Adem, of a man or a warrior who saw an angel holding a scroll, and he asked this angel, "What's in that scroll?" And he's replied by saying, "Is the names of those who love the Lord." And he asked, "Is my name there?" They say, "No, because you don't even know who this Lord is." He says, "Well, I don't know the Lord, but I love the people. I love people." And the following day, he has a similar dream, and the scroll is there, and he asked if his name is there, and his name was number one, because by loving people, he had loved the Godhead, he had loved Allah, he had loved, he had shown the greatest of love. And I think that poem describes a person like Ozinga, that yes, he had a lot of weakness, was a human being, but above all, he loved people with all his heart. He loved freedom with all his heart, and he understood, as maybe Steve Biko had said in the Sasso BBC trial, that white people cannot talk about being free if black people are not free. And that was Brazinga, that was Bradon. There was no sacrifice too big for him to make if it's in the service of the people. We can tell a lot of stories, but above all, we have lost the one who loved. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And also Bishop Clyde to bring you back into the discussion. And as we are talking, my memory is actually just flashing back. That was a picture of myself and the great Don Mattera in 2017, where I had the opportunity of interviewing him. And I must say, it was actually fascinating. And also Bishop Clyde, just to look at him as a person, you know, apart from what he just stood for, but looking at him as a person, we know that he held high to certain principles. He was never ever compromising. He never compromised those principles, and he was a man that spoke, and irrespective of who it is, at the end of the day, he called a spade, and that is who Don Mattera was. He never held back in any way whatsoever.
Indeed, sir. I want to concur with that. It was Cornel West who said something that I think is befitting. He says, "I cannot be an optimist, but I am a prisoner of hope." And I think Don Mattera ensembles that. He was a prisoner of hope. His heart of compassion came from him being a prisoner of hope, hope for a future. Every engagement that he partook in, initiated, started, or joined was with a hope that things would change. Now, in our context today, and perhaps that's a question you raised earlier, when we deal with the subject matter or the construct of social justice, in our country, it is often considered as excluding economic justice. While the construct by itself would mean social justice, includes economic issues as well. In our country, you have to say social and economic justice. And I think that's where the problem is. The 1994 project, whatever people want to call it, it remains a project that saw the elites on both sides of the oppressed apartheid, the oppressor apartheid a group, and led by the African National Congress, the oppressed grouping. We must never forget, whatever agreement was made there was made between elites. If the people suffer today, it's because the elites are doing well. If the people are in the doldrums of poverty and squalor, with bad potholes, with the agony of not knowing if we will have a tomorrow in terms of electricity and an economy in tatters, it is because the elites are insulated against that. And so what I'm saying is, Don, being a prisoner of hope, till the end had the hope that change could come. When he was interviewed by Ashraf Garda and many others, he was reflecting, and you could sense the emotion in his reflection. He was reflecting and he was calling a spade, because the 1994 project, however people want to celebrate it, has shown us it is a failure. It is a failure because economic justice is not prevalent enough for the masses. It's a failure because the Constitution by itself ensures that we continue not to have justice. And we saw earlier in this year when Lindiwe Sisulu dared to write an article that some felt very aggrieved by in their different quarters. The fact of the matter is the issues that she's raising by asking the question, I am Zanzi, have we seen justice yet? And that in reflection to the masses. And the answer must come back to say, no, we haven't. Subsequent to Lindiwe Sisulu speaking about this issue, many jurists came out and supported it. Jody Collopin wrote about it. Many others wrote about it, despite the fact that the Chief Justice currently was so offended that he could not see the light of day. But then, apart from that, Don said in that interview, he said that these things continue because some people, in a sense, benefit. And so there are people who are benefiting out of potholes. There are people who are benefiting out of the fact that SASSA money is abused and stuff like that. And that is the thing that I believe we as a society, we are responsible now, and we are obligated to engage regardless to what it costs. With the same conviction, we in the 80s, I'm a product of the 80s, we in the 80s stood against apartheid as students. We must have that same venom in this hour against corruption, against factionalism, against all these isms that destroy our society, Because today what happens is that whatever goes wrong in the African National Congress has bearing and effect upon our nation. And so if we talk about social justice, we have to accept that economic justice for the masses has remained for the last 30 years a mirage. While a few have benefited, the majority of people don't know where a slice of bread is coming from tomorrow. And yet we feel very proud to drive in our blue light cars. We feel great, those who are in business, because they benefited through tenders, but the masses are yet to benefit. I'd like to say if we continue in this trajectory, we should not be surprised to see the Sahara spring on us very soon.
Well, clearly, and this is a concern that is uppermost in many a mind in terms of what you are saying, Bishop Clyde. And Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, and I see we've already 8 p.m., but we're just going to overrun for a few more minutes. Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, when we look at people, the caliber of the late Don Mattera, and these are people that are far and few, and these are people that we don't get to see every day in our lives. These are the chosen people. There are very, very few people in the caliber of people like Don Mattera and the impact that they have made on not only on family, but on each and every person whose lives they have touched. And there are great lessons for us. And I'd like to just focus a bit on some of the lessons that we can take and to follow in the footsteps of people like Don Mattera, because clearly his footsteps, his giant footsteps, are clearly imprinted in the sands of time.
Yes, you see, what Clyde spoke about now is very important, because you see, and I think if you want to talk about lessons, then this is it. Let me tell you very quickly that Don was extremely disappointed with the African National Congress. He was, in fact, resentful of what had been going on in this country for the past few years. And let me tell you, it got much worse after the reports of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Before the reports came out the past few months, it's been ongoing what was coming out of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Nothing disappointed Don more than what was coming out of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. He was very resentful of what had happened to this country under ANC rule. And it speaks to the kind of issues that Clyde, is raising. And so I'm saying this is the big lesson. The big lesson here, and this foundation needs to imbibe and take forward, is why is it that this ANC rule has turned out to be such a disaster concerning those issues of social justice, economic freedoms and justice, what you want to add to it. That is the biggest lesson, and it is what hurt Don most. Let me tell you, there were many times that, honestly, it seems, he was not someone you would shed a tear easily. But I found him to be most emotional when he spoke about what was happening in Eldos, Kliptown, these areas where he often was, Soweto and so on, And so, that is something that needs to be thought of really and going forward, especially with the work of the foundation.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ebrahim. And also, Snowy, as Dr. Ebrahim Harvey has mentioned, and some of the advices and some of the direction that he is obviously providing the foundation need to go. And again, coming back to the question I had raised with him in terms of the lessons from his life and how the foundation could actually, use what he has achieved, firstly, but also in terms of what he stood for and spearheading, obviously, the foundation, being one of the board members going forward, and how this could be of benefit to larger society in more ways than one, not only in terms of social cohesion. Bishop Clyde spoke about economics, so it's not only about social, I would say it's more about social economics. And that, for me, I think is absolutely important and critical.
Can I make one little comment, please? Please,
please.
can I use this platform and in conclusion to appeal to you to use this station and all your other contacts to assist the Don Mattera Legacy Foundation to raise funds and resources with which to carry out its programs. This is key and critical. We've got a huge economic crisis. It's not going to be easy, but when I was interviewed on radio yesterday, I made that appeal. I'm doing the same thing here, and I would like you and everybody else to see how they could assist the foundation in securing funding.
Will do, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey. And Snowy, if you could come back again, and if you could unmute your mic as well, please.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the foundation has a lot of plans that we have, amongst others, earlier on. I think, I can't recall who it was asking why Don Mattera's work is not part of the curriculum. I've just started a few weeks ago communicating with the Department of Education to see how we can start the process, and they've invited me to a meeting next week to see how we can motivate and start that process. So it is a work. I just mentioned that the foundation, if one had to count months, it is really a newborn baby. It was launched in 2020, 2 years of COVID, and it's basically only in its third month, if one could count that. We have many plans, yes. Funding is, of course, as much as people like to say money is the root of all evil. Without money, you can't do anything or help other people. Like to assist with thinking of getting bursaries or having a fund for bursaries to fund students for school, for university, uniforms, etc. So there's huge work lying ahead for this foundation to preserve this legacy, the legacy of compassion, and to be totally empathetic to the struggles of our people. And the only way to help our people, or one of the major ways to help our people, is to liberate them economically, which is the big gap that we have in society, the huge unemployment rate. I mean, 35%, 67% amongst youth. What do we expect? The devil will find work for those idle hands. So we have to concentrate on the youth of this country, or otherwise, as Clyde said, we will go into the Arab Spring. This country will go up in flames, because you cannot live in a society where between the rich and the poor is getting wider as it is in South Africa, and expect people to continue watching how South Africa is the country that sells the most posh Cayennes, and yet it is the most unequal society in the world.
Well, certainly, Snowy, and I think I must disagree with you when you say money is the root of all evil. And I'm sure the great Don Mattera would say it is people who abuse money who are the root of all evil. And I'm sure he would have said that. Bishop Clyde, just final thought from you.
I think it's important to first and foremost say to the foundation, congratulations for starting. My sincere prayer is that this foundation of Don Mattera would not become the type of foundations that we have today in our society. We have factional foundations that parade, that can go after Jacob Zuma every day of their lives, but are silent on the mess that Ramaphosa is doing in this country. We need this foundation to be vocal on the issues of justice, vocal on the issues of morality, vocal on the issues of keeping leadership accountable. And of course, they will get wind from the front, but it has to be what Don was with when he was among us. I'm asking that from the foundation because we have today high-yield foundations. High-yield foundations, meaning they are well sorted out in their bank accounts. That's why they can drive a particular agenda and cause more division in this country. We ask ourselves, why are these foundations quiet when Rome is burning? Why are they quiet, and why are they asking in silence? Why are they in silence on the land issue? Why are they in silence on the race issue? While they talk a lot about corruption in one-dimensional way, when we have state capture right now unfolding in the last 5 years, because all three, it's my conviction that all three arms of state is currently captured, and it's all ensconced within the second term of a president that's currently an incumbent who's supposed to be facing a court case. And so that is my plea, that the frankness of Don would materialize within the life and in the blood of this foundation. Lastly, all of us that have benefited from Don, and I talk about myself, we are willing to come and do spade work. We are willing to avail ourselves. It's not about serving on boards. It's about availing oneself to be useful, to work for this legacy, so that we can realize and actualize the non-racial dream that we must give content, because currently it's a complete conflated construct in this nation. And so I'm praying that all of us would roll up our sleeves and come to assist. At the time of the launch, I wasn't in the country. That's why I didn't attend it, but I knew about it. And so we are availing ourselves to help wherever we can to make sure. I'm heartened by the fact, Snowy, to hear that you are in conversation with the department on that particular segment of Don's life. There are many others, the soccer, there are many other things that needs to be looked at. But I believe that all the communities that Don walked in, where his feet touched the dust, there are people sitting ready to do something, because we're not doing it just for Don, we're doing it for our own children's future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And unfortunately, Lybon Mabasa is experiencing load shedding. So that is the reason why he's gone off from the panel. And again, this is another problem. It's another topic for another day. But to you, Bishop Clyde, Ramalaine, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, and also Snowy Mattera, we thank you. We do appreciate all of you taking time out in paying tribute to the late Dr. Don Mattera. And I must say, it's been a fascinating discussion, and his legacy obviously will live for a very, very long time. And also the appeal that you have made, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, to our radio station as well. We have taken note, we have taken heed of your appeal as well. So to all of you, we thank you. We appreciate your time. We wish you all the best, and please take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Well, that brings us to the end of part one of tonight's discussion, and that was paying tribute to the late marhum Dr. Don Mattera, rahimahumullah. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill his qabr with nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on his family, but also more importantly, the wonderful lessons that we can take from the life from this great giant among giants. And he certainly was. And for those of us who have been exposed to him, who have had the honor and the pleasure of meeting him, and me personally having spent a lot of time with him in the studios of Salam Media in 2017, gave me such a deep insight into what a giant this man truly was. And you can follow us, Salam Media, on Twitter at Salam Media. The time is just gone, 13 minutes past 8. We come back, and we still got a lot more to talk about. We're talking about Julian Assange.